Fathers being taken out of the home was the biggest detriment to male bonding that has ever happened in the history of the world.
I agree with you, Trigger, but now that that is our reality, how do we fix it, right? How do we fix it instead of complaining about it? If, like you stated, you guys cannot kumbaya the way you stated, as women can, but you can through sports, you can through boxing, you can through physical activity. There should be more programs like that. I don't understand having a mentality that you can only worry about your child is continuing the problem. You have to worry about other children because they don't have that. And mentorship, let's be honest, it doesn't replace a father, but it does help.
You say that what's happening to men is a 5-alarm fire for men in the United States. Tell us what's going on as you see it.
Well, the statistics are pretty stark. If you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people who've died by suicide, 4 are men. 3 times as likely. We have a homeless problem and an opiate problem, but what we really have is a male homeless and a male opiate problem. 3 times as likely to be addicted, 3 times as likely to be homeless, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. More single women own homes than single men. Women in urban areas are making more money. And let me be clear, we should do nothing to get in the way of that. But if our young men continue to flail, our country and women aren't going to continue to flourish. And just a couple of things you brought up, loneliness and then role models. 1 out of 4 men can't name a best friend. 1 out of 7 men don't have a single friend. And what I would say is there's a lot of factors around this, but something to be cognizant of is that...
Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Is that unusual? Is that new?
It's getting worse. And typically when a man isn't in... Women are relationally more invested or more talented establishing relationships. And typically they use their friends as a means of gaining confidence to enter into a romantic relationship. Whereas a man, if he doesn't have a relationship by the time he's 30, there's a 1 in 3 chance he'll be a substance abuser. And also, there's a cartoon Oprah of the poor woman in her 30s that didn't find romantic love, and she's in a big sweater looking out on a rainy day, listening to sad music. What a tragedy. That's a cartoon. The reality is men need relationships much more than women. Widows are happier after their husband dies. Widowers, it's true, widowers are less happy. Women live longer in relationships. They live 2 to 4 years longer. Men live 4 to 7 years longer. So men actually need relationships more. What I would argue, or what I would be cognizant of the fact when you're talking about loneliness, is you're up against the deepest pocketed, most talented companies in the world with godlike technology who are trying to do one thing, and that is sequester you from your other relationships. They're either trying to get you to glued to the phone, and one of the ways they glue you to the phone is by enraging you, elevating content that makes you angry at your neighbor, elevate content that makes you start blaming the other gender or blaming immigrants for your problems.
And this is being done on purpose.
Well, they didn't start out as malicious, but I'm in marketing. We used to think that it was sex that sells. Then the algorithms found something that sells even more in terms of gluing you to a screen, and that is rage. So I'm not suggesting we censor these folks, but they will elevate content. They will figure out your political leanings, your fears, and then start elevating content that enrages you, because enragement equals engagement equals shareholder value. So keep in mind, the amount of time you spend on a screen as a young man, and biologically, your prefrontal cortex isn't as developed as a woman. It doesn't catch up until you're 25. The executive function, the need for dopa, is much more dangerous in a young man. Keep in mind that you will find they are trying to essentially convince you can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen. So keep in mind, you are up against a foe that is trying to separate you from the outside world. And very simply, mathematically, the more time you spend on a screen, the less likely you are to have loving relationships, the less money you're going to make, the more likely you are going to be to engage in self-harm, the more likely you are going to blame other people. In sum, the worse your life gets based on how much time you spend on a screen. We are mammals. We are meant to be outside and in the company of others. And we have for-profit companies trying to convince you to go the other way. So you're up against some very significant foes. On the idea of role models, the single point of failure, if you reverse engineered a boy coming off the tracks, is when he loses a male role model through either death, divorce, or abandonment. We have more single-parent homes than any nation in the world other than Sweden. And what's interesting is that girls in single-parent homes have the same outcome, same rates of college attendance, same income as dual-parent homes. A boy, when he loses a male role model, at that moment is more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college. What it ends up is that while boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and mentally much weaker. And what we need, quite frankly, is we need more men to step up and fill the void. There are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters in New York as there are men applying to be big brothers. So we have an obligation to get involved in a young man's life, right? And it's just to summarize here, if we want better men, we have to be better men.
I thought that last statement was so impactful. And that goes back to what Trev was stating, right? That men don't have a space, but that's because men are not making spaces for young boys to have a space. Women make spaces for young girls. Women try to make spaces for young boys. Women try to make spaces for everybody to get healed. Men don't do that. We sit here and we talk about the problems of men and what women need to do better, but men have to step up as the leaders of community, as the leaders of the world, and actually take back charge. If you want change, you have to create it. You have to create a space for it. All of you men that sit on this panel and you talk about how we can do things better and what needs to change, where are the organizations that are being built? Where's your tribe of young men that you're teaching, that you're mentoring, that you're pulling out of these communities and letting them know that they can lean on another man, that they can take advice from another man? Yeah. Because they don't want to take advice from us. Men don't even want to listen to women. Young boys don't want to listen to us either, because like Trev stated, we're not men. They don't even think we can understand the struggle, which we can, right? But that was just such an impactful statement. I feel like especially in the Black community, that's the main thing that needs to be happening. Constantly pushing for more and more organizations and more substantial men who want to be leaders, who say that they are leaders, who have families, who are married, who are preaching, who are on these podcasts, who have platforms, to be creating organizations for these young boys so that they don't end up in this lonely epidemic that we're talking about. Yeah. Because we can't really do anything about it.
Can I respond real quick? That guy, I watched the entire interview. I thought that guy, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't do that. He is a professor. You know, he is pretty much world renowned for what he does. I think he's an NYU professor. But you just to make it clear from my basis of argument against some of the things that he said, I would have thought he was a psychologist, clinical psychologist, something like a Jordan Peterson. The dude is a professor of marketing. So we have to take what he says and filter it as his perspective. And there are many things that I agree with about his perspective and things that I disagree with. But to Ty's point, because I don't want to negate your point, the one thing that I want us to understand between men and women, when we compare the methods, it's usually equal but opposite, right? It comes natural for women to create those spaces. But what's also interesting is that the very space that boys used to have to thrive and bond with other men is currently under attack in this social culture. Once you attack marriage, once you attack the heterosexual male husband father figure, once you remove him out of the house in mass, what Scott Galloway is actually saying is that affects boys the most. Men not being in the home, because remember, when you say men are supposed to be there and be creating these spaces, this is my phrase that I use. Mentorship cannot replace fatherhood. I cannot go mentor this American culture into submission. I can father my own boy, and a group of fathers can get together and do what's best for the community. It used to be that 2 kids out of 10 didn't have a daddy around, and the other 8 can make up for it. Now that number is much lower, and everybody expects the 2 dads in the neighborhood to do all the work. It does not work like that. Women create spaces because y'all are way more social. Boys are not that. So they play to the point of exhaustion. They play outside. We do rough play. We do sports. That is our bonding mechanisms, right? But it won't happen the exact same way the girls do it. If my dad would have took me to go sit around and kumbaya with a bunch of boys, I'd have threw up on the floor. Ew, that's disgusting. We don't do that. I need to play. We need to be fighting, fist fighting, slap boxing. That's what we do. And fathers being taken out of the home was the biggest detriment to male bonding that has ever happened in the history of the world.
I agree with you, Trigger, but now that that is our reality, how do we fix it? Right? How do we fix it instead of complaining about it? If, like you stated, you guys cannot kumbaya the way you stated, as women can, but you can through sports, you can through boxing, you can through physical activity. There should be more programs like that. I don't understand having a mentality that you can only worry about your child is continuing the problem. You have to worry about other children because they don't have that. And mentorship, let's be honest, it doesn't replace a father, but it does help. It will help. You can change the trajectory of a child's life by being a positive influence on their lives if you want to be. I think we have a lot of men in our community that just don't want to. You guys would rather just focus on your children, and I get it, right? I understand you deal with enough. You just want to deal with your kids because you don't know what you're going to have to deal with coming into contact with someone else. But what is the change? How do we make the change?
Yeah.
If we realize most families are like that now.
I got you. No, that is a great question, but nobody ever seems to like the answer. We could dance around it, but nobody likes the answer.
What's the
It
answer?
will never be. A community is not a group of individuals. And basically what you're asking me now is that because everybody's divorced and because nobody's married, how do we get a bunch of people to come mentor and whip these individuals into shape? It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because a community is actually a group of families. If I could just give you an example, I'm a married father. All of the children that I mentor or that I help are in my community. I realize that my community is just where my kids are at. So when I put the stool in front of the driveway and let my daughter and my son go up, skate, bike, scooter up and down, all the rest of the kids come outside. They scrape their knee. I pick them up. I'll wave at the parent like, no, I got this. I'll bandage them up. Or I'll tell them, hey, I'm taking everybody to the park. The proximity to your family is the only way this can actually be done. So I don't want to catastrophize and say it can't be done. What I'm telling you is that the only way we have ever done this is through the family structure. And I would love to hear somebody tell me another way it can be done because no group in human history has ever done it another way.
Well, I think, and I'll try to add on to what you said, Trigger. I think what's maybe Ty is saying, and what I even assume Bo may jump on the mic and say, is that because of the conditions of how people live now, us as men need to adapt to what is actually happening and then forecast what we could create moving forward. I don't disagree with you on how we are traditionally socialized, reared, and supported. What I will say I disagree with Ty, but not directly at her, is that I don't believe that it's an organization-based thing. I think that this is a multifaceted issue. I'll explain from my perspective. It is always going to start from the family. That is the nucleus of development for humans, male and female alike. The issue is that there's an attack on masculinity. There's a certain type of spirit in the land that anything men do is always bad before it's good, because some of these remedies could be that men should be supported by women through these organizations. Why aren't there more men in daycare? Why aren't there more male teachers? Why aren't there more male in spaces where at the development of children, whether they have a man in the house or not, they get to experience a man? That doesn't happen because all men are bad first. This is society, right? So that's one tier. Then you have the family structure. You have more women being incentivized to remove the man and prove that they can do this child rearing thing by themselves. But then they partner with governments and child support and things of that nature. So there's so many layers to it. I think what is happening in these spaces now, because of the divide of the family, young men are actually hearing for the first time that they matter, that they have a voice, that they can actually create standards for self, even within relationships. Most men did not grow up thinking you could even tell a woman no, or that you could have standards. This space is actually aiding in that. So I think it will shift, but from an organizational perspective, I don't think we attack it that way. I think that's more of a woman thing. And I've been a part of some of these organizations. Not all of them are necessarily doing work. They're corralling and talking, but I can't say that they're necessarily effective in all their approach to things. And not land.